My name is Walter Hale. I'm 97 years old. Every morning I sit at the same small table by the window. The light comes in around 6:30, not because it's beautiful, but because it's predictable. I like knowing where the day begins. I make coffee the same way I've made it for 40 years. 2 scoops, no sugar. I drink it slowly because there's no reason not to. I've noticed something over the years. Most people don't die suddenly. They don't collapse. They don't disappear all at once. They slowly shut down. I've watched it happen to people I knew well. Frank Miller, who used to fix radios in his garage just to see if he still could. One day he stopped, said he was tired. He lived another 12 years after that, never fixed another thing. Eleanor Brooks, my neighbor, she used to read 2 books a week. Then she said she'd read enough in her life. She lived to 92. The books stayed untouched. They were alive, but they weren't really there anymore. People hear that and think I'm talking about illness, dementia, disease. I'm not. I'm talking about something that starts long before the body fails. Something quieter, harder to point at, easier to ignore. I'm not a doctor. I never was. I worked as an accountant. Boring work, honest work. What I have is time. 97 years of watching patterns repeat themselves in different faces. I watched my older brother Samuel retire at 62 and decide he was done. Done learning, done arguing, done caring about things that didn't affect him directly. He didn't die until 81, but he was already gone long before that, sitting in the chair, watching the television, waiting. People ask me why I'm still sharp, why I still remember names, dates, conversations from decades ago. They ask it like it's luck. It isn't. I stayed awake to my life. That's the part no one likes to hear. Most people don't die. They slowly decide there's nothing left that requires them. And once that decision is made, the rest is just time catching up. I don't say any of this because I think I'm special. I wasn't particularly smart. I wasn't ambitious in the way people admire. I didn't change the world. I kept numbers balanced. I showed up on time. I raised 2 children with Margaret, paid the mortgage, fixed what I could, and lived a life that would look very ordinary on paper. What I have isn't brilliance. It's years, 97 of them. That's enough time to see the same story play out again and again, with different names and slightly different excuses. Enough time to stop pretending the outcomes are random. I watched men sharper than me lose their edge because they stopped testing it. I watched women braver than me grow small because no one expected anything from them anymore. And eventually, they expected nothing from themselves. None of them planned to disappear. They just made small decisions to stop engaging one after another until there was nothing left to engage with. People like to believe life ends because something breaks, a heart, a brain, a body. Most of the time, nothing breaks. It's set down, carefully, quietly. I've attended enough funerals to know the difference between someone who arrived at the end present and someone who had already checked out years earlier. You can feel it in the room, in the way people talk about them, in the things they don't say. I don't speak as an expert. I speak as a witness. 97 years is long enough to see what keeps people alive inside and what drains them without leaving a mark. Long enough to stop lying to yourself about how it happens. There's a pattern to it. There always was. And once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it again. The first shutdown doesn't look dramatic. No one notices it happening, not even the person it's happening to. It begins when people stop doing things that make them uncomfortable. Not dangerous things, not painful things, just difficult things. The kind that require attention, effort, a little humility. I saw it in Thomas Reed, a man I worked with for 20 years. He used to argue every number I put in front of him, not to be difficult, because he cared about getting it right. After he turned 60, he started saying, "Close enough." He stopped checking the work twice, stopped asking questions. He wasn't tired, he just didn't want to strain himself anymore. He retired 5 years later. Within a year, his conversation shrank. Sports scores, weather, complaints, anything that didn't ask something of him. That's how it starts. People confuse rest with disengagement. They tell themselves they've earned the right to stop pushing their mind, to stop wrestling with ideas, to stop being wrong and correcting themselves. They say, I've done enough learning in my life. What they don't realize is that the brain doesn't care how much you've done in the past. It only responds to what you ask of it now. I watched Eleanor Brooks stop reading anything that challenged her. She said the world was too complicated these days. What she meant was that she didn't want to feel slow. So she avoided anything that reminded her she wasn't as quick as she once was. Within a few years, she wasn't. No one forced these people to shut down. They chose ease, then routine, then silence. And the most dangerous part is that life continues. Friends still call, meals still get eaten, days still pass. From the outside, nothing looks wrong, but inside, something essential has gone quiet. The first shutdown isn't about age. It's about the moment someone decides they no longer want to be challenged by their own life. That decision rarely feels important, but it is the one everything else follows. The second shutdown comes later. It happens when people stop being needed, not admired, not praised, needed. I saw it most clearly after retirement. Men and women who had been depended on for decades, decisions, judgments, corrections, suddenly found themselves unnecessary. Phones stopped ringing. Opinions were no longer requested. Mistakes happened without them being asked to fix anything. Some adjusted, most didn't. My neighbor George Whitman ran a hardware store for 38 years. People came to him with broken things and left with answers. When he sold the store, he told me he was relieved, said he was tired of responsibility. For the first year, he enjoyed the quiet. The second year, he complained about it. By the third, he barely spoke at all. When no one needs you, something in the mind starts to loosen. Slowly, you stop paying close attention. You stop preparing for tomorrow. You stop sharpening anything because there's nothing left to use it for. People think rest is harmless, that stepping back is the same as slowing down. It isn't. Rest is temporary. Disappearance is permanent. Those who didn't replace usefulness with something else, teaching, helping, building, advising, didn't fade because of age. They faded because their lives stopped requiring them to show up fully. And once you're no longer required, it becomes very easy to require nothing of yourself. There's a lie people tell themselves during all of this. They say, I still have time. Time to read later. Time to learn later. Time to reconnect later. Time to matter later. I heard it from Samuel, my brother, for nearly 20 years. Every time I asked why he didn't pick up anything new, why he didn't volunteer, why he didn't challenge himself, he waved it away. I've got time, Walt. I'm just enjoying the quiet. But quiet doesn't stay quiet. It turns into emptiness if you let it. The lie isn't that time runs out suddenly. The lie is believing that waiting doesn't cost anything. Every year you delay effort, your tolerance for effort shrinks. Every year you avoid difficulty, difficulty feels heavier the next time you face it. Until one day, even small things feel overwhelming. People don't wake up one morning unable to engage with life. They practice for it, slowly, patiently, without noticing. I've seen the contrast often enough that I no longer argue with it. There were people who stayed curious, even when it embarrassed them, who kept conversations alive by asking questions instead of repeating opinions, who stayed involved, not because it was pleasant, but because it kept them awake. And then there were those who chose comfort, not luxury, comfort, predictable days, familiar thoughts, no friction. The difference doesn't show immediately. For a while, comfort looks peaceful, but over the years, the gap widens. One group keeps arriving in their own lives. The other drifts further from them. I'm not judging either side. I've simply watched where each path leads. The people who stayed engaged didn't live forever. None of us do, but they were present until the end. Their eyes followed conversations. Their minds stayed sharp enough to disagree. They were still there. The others weren't unlucky. They just chose the easier direction early and kept choosing it quietly every day. The hardest lesson came from Margaret. She was my wife for 56 years, strong-minded, curious, the kind of woman who asked questions that didn't have easy answers. For most of our life together, she stayed sharp because she refused to make herself small, even when it would have been easier. But after her sister Clara died, something shifted. Not all at once, just enough that I noticed it. Margaret stopped going to the community lectures she used to enjoy. Said she'd heard it all before. She stopped writing letters, said no one wrote back properly anymore. None of it sounded dangerous, it sounded reasonable. I didn't stop her. I told myself she was grieving, that she needed rest. Within a few years, her world had narrowed. Not because she couldn't keep up, but because she no longer reached outward. When she died, it wasn't confusion that took her. It was withdrawal. I loved her deeply, and I learned from her in a way I wish I hadn't had to. What keeps a person alive isn't health alone. It's having something unfinished, a conversation you're still thinking about, someone who expects your perspective, a problem that hasn't been solved yet, something that waits for you tomorrow and would be worse off if you didn't show up. I've seen men with failing bodies stay mentally clear because they were still involved in something that mattered. And I've seen perfectly healthy people shut down because nothing required them anymore. Life doesn't ask for grand purpose. It asks for participation. When you stop participating, it doesn't protest. It simply moves on without you. I stayed alive inside because I kept placing myself where I was still required. Tutoring a neighbor's grandson, helping a friend with his taxes, reading things I didn't immediately understand. Arguing, sometimes badly, with people younger than me. Not because it was pleasant, because it kept me awake. I'm 97 years old now. I don't know how much time I have left. I don't worry about it. I've watched enough endings to know that time itself isn't the threat. Drifting is. Most people don't die when their bodies fail. They die when they slowly step back from their own lives. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what I've seen. Take it or leave it. As for me, tomorrow morning I'll sit by the window again. I'll drink my coffee. I'll read something that makes me work a little to understand it, and if someone still needs me for something small, I'll show up. That's enough for now.